Namaskar and a very warm welcome from Team Hingori Sutras for this session of In Conversation with Gajendra Kadam. आप सबको रामनवमी की बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं. Today, with our topic Mind is a Mirror, we pay respect to one of the greatest exposition of philosophy, Yog Vashisht. As we all know, Yog Vashisht is the conversation between Lord Ram and Guru Vashisht. In the Yog Vashisht, it is said our imagination and misery is actually irrational and unfounded. This is due to the false assumption of the ego sense. The consciousness thinks that the world appearance is indeed real. It is the mind alone that is the root cause of experiencing the world as if it were real. Therefore, it is important to understand what actually constitutes the mind. To simplify the mind, to explain what we do mean by the mind is a mirror, we have with us member of our team, Hingori Sutras, Gajendra Kadam. A very warm welcome to you. आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है गजेंद्र.
Thank you, Anjali, for giving us an opportunity to bring this intricate topic of mind as a mirror.
Before we delve into what we mean by the mind is a mirror, Gajendra, I'd like you to please clarify how do we generally perceive the mind versus what actually is the mind?
So, I would have actually wanted to say that, many of us would have thought or heard or listened in various YouTube videos to say that mind is a monkey, right? And rightfully so, because we keep on moving from one to another as a thought process. And that's the reason people would want to call it as mind as a monkey. But I don't want to go there. Maybe I'll first try to read out the medical term in terms of what they call mind as we go deeper into understanding of what is really mind, if I was to say. So medically, when I read, it says the human consciousness that originates in brain and is manifested especially in thought, perception, emotion, will, memory, and imagination. Similarly, there is another one which states the conscious and unconscious process in a sentient organism that directs and influences mental and physical behavior. Why I chose to pick up this scientific evidence or scientific definition is there is one thing which is common, and it talks about consciousness or something which is much more within, and probably also helping us to guide to say that this consciousness is the one which is helping us to drive our decisions or actions, if I would say. But before I do that, let me ask you this, Anjali, what did you have for lunch today?
Khichdi and dahi.
So I had an amazing food rather than this. And you know what I had? I had a amazing Hyderabadi biryani. Okay. The soya chap biryani, extremely succulent. I think the fragrances, I would not want to call out the name of the hotel where we had it from, but extremely succulent aroma, nice crispy onions being put onto it. And the speciality of that place is they give a very tangy salan. Okay, salan is nothing but the gravy which goes along. And why did I bring this thought? If the viewers actually close their eyes and think, yeah, go ahead.
Smell it. I can actually smell the aroma of when you say Hyderabadi and a little bit of saffron fragrance. Right. Biryani. Yep.
Exactly. But where did this come from? Because actually, it was me who actually tasted the biryani in a material form. I only gave a visualization, or not even visualization. I just stated what I had. But I'm sure many of the viewers and you yourself were able to connect to those, and it started recreating those memories and recreating that entire biryani in a form in your mind. So if you think or you want to understand where is mind, the place where you could actually imagine this happening is the place where mind is. Make sense?
Yes, true.
So that said, I think we suddenly realized two things which happened. I had a material form. What you had is something which is a dream form, right? But both kind of coexisted, right? And
Right.
that balance, if I was to say, is the beauty of the mind, that it can, when it looks outwards, it is able to think in a material form. When it looks inwards, I'm sure when I was saying, many of us would have looked inwards on the flavors of biryani and they were able to pull it out from there. And that is the dream state balance that we were able to bring it. And that's the beauty of the mind. I would want to also call up a parallel example from quantum physics, if I may.
Yes, please.
The and the reason that as a science student, it is very difficult for me to just go ahead and say on a spiritual line, because I believe spirituality is also the science which is still to be discovered by the mainstream science, right? And the classical thing, which now I've been starting to like about the quantum physics, is it states that the matter behaves like a wave until and unless observed by an external intelligent observer. So essentially what it is telling is everything that biryani, which was in a matter form, and what I could transfer you in a wave form in my thought process, and the intelligent observer, which is the mind, if it observes it, we can actually materialize it in a different form. So I wanted to bring it up because someday I'm hopeful that quantum physics can also bring us a better way of communicating the mind, or how the state of matter and dream state can come into picture, because dream state is nothing else but waves, right? So I believe in all of this that I was trying to bring up. The ability of a mind is well understood, that we are able to look within, draw on our experiences, and that's where you felt the biryani, let's say, is where the mind is.
The reflection of the biryani. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
When we talk about like how you could reflect or manifest material out of wave, uh, we have this question where the mind is what we like our topic today. The mind is like a mirror. It can absorb everything, like what you said, about the world to reflect it. But the mirror can neither see itself nor reflect itself.
Very.
And now, what does the statement mind is a mirror then mean?
So I think you brought it very clearly, but I still want to first bring in the mirror definition before. I think mind definition was clear to people. If the biryani example was good enough for people to understand. Uh, let's talk about what is the definition of a mirror. I mean, you rightly said that it reflects, it shows. Does mirror have its own identity? It doesn't, right? It just takes in, reflects back, and it's up to you to go ahead and look into it. The classical thing about mirror, if there is a life lesson to be picked up from a mirror, is it is completely unattached. It doesn't care who's viewing into it, what mental state of that person who's viewing into it. It has nothing to do with it. What it only decides is whatever comes my way is the way I am going to reflect it back, right? And that's the property of a mirror, is what we need to attain. Yeah. In general, we like to say that mind is a mirror, but the property is what actually we want to attain. So it's a more of a mind as a mirror, or is more of a mission statement, if I would say. Uh, you know, just pause back for a moment and think over it. Is the reality really what we see in the mirror? Yeah. And the classical example that I may draw on that is, many of us, I haven't personally visited Agra, but many of us have, seen those pictures where the beautiful picture of Taj Mahal being reflected back into the Yamuna River. And I think now it is not really as great, but I'm sure it was amazing at some point in time. That picture, when you look at, you see that Taj Mahal exactly being replicated down, and it's perfect still. Now the question to you is, are there fishes in that Taj Mahal or that Yamuna River there?
Yes.
If in today's world, I may also end up saying, is there all the dirt which is in the Yamuna River is also there, right?
Yes.
So is the picture really telling us the truth, or it's only when we actually going underneath and seeing is the truth, right?
Okay.
And this is where actually this becomes much more interesting, right? If I may want to bring up that same concept of chitta vrittis here. The still
Before
water.
this,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Gajendra, I just want to understand what you're saying is that, the reflection of the Taj Mahal onto the river, that reflection that looks so beautiful, is that the reflection, is that the Taj Mahal or is that the river, right? And if it is,
Exactly.
we look at it as the river, then is that reflection a river, or is it those fishes swimming beneath the actual river? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, because exactly, right. End of the day, what we were supposed to be seeing is that river. Right?
Absolutely.
But we got ourselves trapped into that cynic view of, okay, Taj Mahal, and underneath. It's only
Right.
when you start drawing up and thinking much more closer and going closer, that reflection actually dissolves. And you start seeing
And you
what is
realize that's
underneath.
not the real. That's not the
Exactly.
reality.
Exactly. Right?
Right.
So the state, I mean, that's where the statement that mind is a mirror is not an absolute state to attain, but the real absolute state to attain, to transcend that mirror to see the mirror to see the reality.
Right.
Right? Because otherwise, we will be always thinking, I mean, my own self-reflection, if I was to look into the mirror and think that, okay, this is what I am, that's the physical me.
So when there is a bit of a storm and the water gets a little turbulent, so that image which I consider a reality is broken.
Exactly. That's where I was bringing up the chitta vrittis, right? That image is formed on that chitta or that still water. But the moment you bring in storm, you throw in certain pebbles of your thought and it creates those ripples in, everything starts distorting and shaking. And the worst part of this chitta vritti or the vrittis that are being formed is the more that you throw into it, you can't even see the reflection, nor can you see what is underneath. Because
So
the
the
water is
water
getting through
becomes
the
more
mud.
muddy, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
The mud
Exactly.
comes up, and that stillness of the clarity of the water doesn't allow you to see what's really within.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that is where Nirodh comes into picture.
Okay.
Right? Because the goal is to keep the water as much still. Right? If you think what we said is the most important characteristic of a mirror is it is unattached. But the mind is not similar to a hardwired, a strong glass pane mirror. The mind is something which is very subtle, right? And that whenever you put in more stones onto it or more pebbles onto it, it is going to start distorting the reality. And unless you learn to keep that water calm, you will not be able to see what the mirror or what the reality is, and to transcend that reflection underneath to see the real picture. Make sense?
So So from what I understand from you is the mind actually shows you, it's a perception. It shows you what it already contains in it as a reflection of, it's like a veil that covers onto the truth. Yeah. But
Exactly.
yeah, that way. So to look within that, to be able to see that no, that there is something more, we need to bring in that stillness, that equilibrium, which
Exactly.
can only happen if you manage to bring in that stillness through transcending or to controlling the vrittis,
Right.
which are the disturbances in the mind.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
And
And
I think that's very important, right? I mean,
right,
if for a moment, let's agree that, okay, even if it's a mirror, the stillness or the control that the mind will have to bring in, right?
mhm,
Before even being able to, because everything will keep on shaking. And then how will you even focus on anything, right?
right. But here, if I may ask you, so we talk about this mind in our physical existence, right? So this is
So,
our physical existence, and this is in yoga, like you said, the chittavriti nirodha. Nirodha, as you explained, is that observership, like how the mirror is detached, mm, and doesn't really play a role in what it is reflecting.
right.
So from what I understand, if there's garbage being reflected on the mirror, it doesn't become garbage. Or if there is, say, if there is a beautiful Ferrari reflected there, it doesn't become a Ferrari, right?
Exactly. And
Hmm.
nor does its valuation, right? Just
Nor does
because
it.
it's showing garbage, its valuation is going to go down, or just
Absolutely.
because Ferrari, its valuation is going to go up.
Right. And then you spoke about the bringing that equilibrium and bringing that calmness on the surface is important for us to be able to see the reality. What
True.
is this reality?
A science student will have the most amazing this time to explain reality. But the matter of fact is, let me first give you some stats, and I think I can peel this furthermore as we go through. The I mean, first of all, we know the senses, right? We have vision, touch, smell,
The five senses.
five senses, whatever it is. The classical thing is, we humans can only see 0.0035% of the visible light. I'm repeating, it's only 0.0035% of the visible light. The spectrum is all the way from gamma all the way up to radio waves, and we are only seeing a small, tiny speck, if I was to say.
Right.
Now comes the listening also. It's all the way from, we can hear all the way from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Versus in reality, the elephants can communicate below 20 hertz. Okay. And there are bats. We may have heard about bats, right? They communicate ultrasonically, and similar is the dolphins, which is well over a few hundred megahertz. Why did I bring up this point is, we are, even in our listening, we are limited by our capabilities, right? And I don't even want to go about the senses, because I don't want to really ask you whether you want to feel a minus 100-degree sea temperature and maybe plus 1,000-degree sea temperature, because those are something which are way beyond what we want to do, right? So tell me this: is the reality that we perceive through our senses, can it be even a reality? Because we are hardly seeing a small speck of the entire spectrum that exists. Most likely the answer will be no. You agree with me?
Yes.
So I want us to, what it takes to see the reality. I think I would want to first pause back and let you ask the question before we go into the reality. Do you know what is the most strongest or the most powerful destruction weapon known to us?
Nuclear.
Yeah, I think the Ukraine war has given enough for us to think about, right?
Absolutely.
Is it something which is a massive material, or it is the nuclear?
It is in the micro to the micro to the micro to the micro to the multiple levels of.
Exactly. So, which means that the atom or the nuclear has got a potential of destructing the biggest things in the world. Similarly, if we go inwards and go to the most subtlest form, is where we can unlock the real potential of seeing the truth. Yeah. So why am I bringing this? And this was a very nice example for me to think about when I was going through, right? That we try to become big by looking at big things. I think the real thing is going to the smallest level and trying to understanding it from that level is where the reality will start coming in, right? The and what is reality for that matter? I think the reality is when there is no duality at all. The classical one is if the atom, think about it, can the atom differentiate itself by saying I am this atom and you are different atom on that same big block of, let's say, iron that is there, right? It cannot differentiate. Everything is one. But in its own, it's got an amazing power that can be harvested. So there is no duality, there is no differentiation. And that realization that I am that, or I am the ultimate. It's not about I have to be the ultimate, but the realization that I am the ultimate and working inwards to become that ultimate is what the reality is. Right? There is no right or wrong. There is nothing if I was to say you and I. It's all one union, non-dual state. And that is what the reality is, the way I will.
So what you're saying is reality is not becoming a part of that oneness, but reality is the oneness.
Yes, because part of oneness is actually the seed itself is that you and I are not one. I am trying to become one.
Absolutely. Right.
Right.
So reality is in finally not so there is absolute no action, no doership, no realization, no experience. It is in capital ITIS. It is.
Exactly. Right. Because the moment the thought, I mean, think about a thought for a moment itself. If I say that I and you are different, or I want to become that, is the recognition that I am not that. And with that recognition, how can I reach to that state? I would never be able to. So the basic psyching that I have to do is, yes, I am that.
So we've understood what the physical mind is. We've understood what the mirror is. We've understood what reality is. Now my question to you is, if the mind is the mirror, then why cannot I see reality?
You want to hear Galib, what Galib said?
Yes, please.
Galib stated, ताउम्र ये गालिब भूल करता रहा, ताउम्र गालिब ये भूल करता रहा, धूल चेहरे पे थी और वो आईना साफ करता रहा. Right? What does that mean is, throughout his life, he was trying to look the wrong way. Right? Now, let's talk about why we don't see reality, right? And we'll go to your questions slightly later. But I want to again use an example so that people first realize that we have an innate ability to see the reality. Okay, and it is scientifically proven. So I first wanted to use the scientific evidence before I get into how we can get there. And you know what was the experiment that was done? Was it is a blindfold experiment. People were made to sit, and there were lot many people. Okay, this one is repeated over 30,000 data points. So what was done is there was an observer and there was another person who was expected to be a, just seeing, or has his eyes closed or her eyes closed, but was supposed to record a response to go ahead and say he or she does he believe that the observer is actually staring at them or not staring at them. So this is the classical staring experiment. And I'll tell you, because it's only two person involved, right? The observer and observed. In this experiment, ideally, from a mathematical probability, it was only a 50-50 probability. The outcome of the experiment stands that it was 54% to 55% of the times the observed was able to tell whether somebody was looking at him or her or not, okay, with the blindfolded eyes. And this is not by chance, because in statistics, that 4% delta is huge population that moves into that area. Okay. Why did I bring this up is I wanted us to recognize, because typically we think that, you know what, this is all nice to talk about, but these were not given any spiritual lessons. And still the person was able to identify who's looking at it, which means we are wired to have that capability. We have that potency within to be able to get this additional information even with our closed eyes. Right? Now let's look at what is stopping us, why we are not able to, right? And the classical one is, tell me this, how many times do we actually get a hunch that this is not going to happen? Or, I'm going out for my work. I have a hunch that this is not going to happen. But I force myself with logic. I force myself with rational that, no, these are the right things to do. And because of which at times I just miss out the fact that, I didn't look into what was coming my way. And many a times I would say closing your eyes was the best thing which happened for that observer in that experiment, because they were able to look within and draw on that experiences. Going further, I think our preconditioning, as a child, as an adult, our entire environment, I mean the social environment that we have, everything actually makes our mind think in more logical way. The classical example, I'll tell you this, something which happens at my home. And you know what is that? I am told that bread should not be had without toasting because it is kacha bread. Now the logic, I mean, I have not ever understood why should that be, but think about those people who since childhood are being taught this. And I'm sure many of our homes are having that. What is that example? It's nothing else but the preconditioning that we go through in our journey, right? And that preconditioning is getting hardwired inside us to not see the reality. That preconditioning makes us to think into duality. Even the previous one where we were seeing that I am thinking that you and I are different. But if we were taught that no, we are one, actually it should have been much more leaps and bounds ahead of the time, right? Then the emotions, I mean, humankind by itself is wired for flight or fight response. For any situation, the humankind is first going to go ahead and think, what should be my response? It is right or wrong. What should be my response? And it draws onto the previous experiences to an extent that it actually draws onto previous life's experiences as well, the samskaras. And then basis that, it wants to go ahead and twist the reality that we are seeing. Right? So I would first want to pause because I want to bring in another dimension before I speak on the entire thing. But Anjali, did this explanation of what are the adulterations that are happening in us for us not being able to see reality, is that coming in well before I actually touch upon the other topic on the same one that I'm going to talk about?
Yes, if I just put them in order, what you said was that the preconditioning of our mind and of our experiences, which are not only from this life, but also what we carry forward in our attributes from through our samskars from our previous lives, is the emotions that we attach to the thoughts or to the learnings that, or to the experiences that we've had, in this life. I mean, these are the two things that sort of create a wall or a veil which blocks us to be able to see beyond this physical existence, if I may.
Very true. And let's call it for a moment as adulteration or some kind of filter. आंखों पे चश्मा लगाया, सब जगह लाल दिखता है. But this is where I would want to introduce a term. And if people want to, I mean, I like that I was able to think about it in 3D. Okay, it's not a 3D as a movie, but we can use it. What are the 3Ds that are there in this entire vision or reality exploration? 1D, the first one is drishta. The second one is the drishti. Okay. Third one we will touch later, but we covered the two dimensions, drishta and drishti, which means, let's say the observer which is looking at the screen right now, that observer is nothing else but the drishta. Drishti is the one which, the image which is being projected and that image being processed in the mind is the drishti that is there. Okay. And the processing is only to the level that, like a mirror, what you saw, you just put it in, you're not making any judgment out of it. Okay. The last one is the most important, and that is the drishtikon. Okay. So we talked about drishta, drishti, drishtikon. The third D is the one where all these filters or the adulterations that we talked about, your life experiences may have taught you to have a different perception of that same reality. And that's the reason you are going to think that the reality is this. Okay. Versus I may have had a completely different perception. Right? I mean, the classical, these are summers, and some of you, I mean, I would love to have an ice cream during this time. And the moment I will look at an ice cream, I may have a moment of joy for that ice cream. Right? And for somebody who's got a toothache, that same ice cream would suddenly become a sense of pain that he or she may decide that no. Ice cream means pain. Right? What has happened? It's the same object, but the viewpoint changed. Right? And that's what it is. But the moment you transcend through all of this, where you suddenly see drishta, drishti, and drishtikon becoming one, right? There is no duality left. The divinity within me is the divinity within you, as we start seeing. And that's the point where we touch upon the real reality. Did I come across to you?
Yes, that leads you to the fourth D, which is divinity.
Yeah, I think that's a nice one. We should add it, that there are 4 Ds now.
Right. So this then takes me to one more question. I mean, there's a slight doubt is with the understanding about the mind and our need to transcend it. We need to know how to do that. How do I see the reality through my mind, which is so very clogged up and which is so filled up with so many emotions or so many perceptions. And you have guilt attached to it. You have this non-acceptance of your image in the mirror. We all of us, we look into the mirror. What do we see? Oh, either I'm too fat or I'm too thin, or my hair not looking good, or my complexion is a mess, and it goes on and on and on.
Right.
How
So
do
I
we?
think before I answer the how, for a moment, let's step back still to that drishta, drishti, drishtikon, right? And the
Right.
divinity that we brought in. I think the divinity, I think we should call it as drishta, drishti, drishtikon is equal to divinity for the sake of it for a moment.
Correct.
Because till I change my divinity with the right equation, I will not be able to. And that is what is very important is, you have to start believing that you are divine. And the journey is, once you believe that you are divine, we have to start getting into our actions, because think like a divine is the way I will put it. Okay, the entire goal of a journey towards becoming that one single union is thinking like a divine, if I was to say. And for that thinking, how do I achieve that thinking of being divine? Is, I think it's it's relatively simple to explain, but to practice it may be slightly more effort. But let's evolve that. So we have this in umpteen number of Hingori sessions that we have talked about SMS or Seva, Mantra Vidya, self-worship. Let's look at it how each of those elements actually change our self, and our thinking really starts acting as a divine rather than anything else. The first one is Seva. When I started Seva, that all ego and all certainly was there, but gradually what happened is it became a daily life routine. But more than that, there was a main important thing which started changing in me, and I think that's where the divinity started kicking in. When you meet somebody and you try to help somebody, it's not only the exchange of whatever charity that is happening, but there is an increasing sense of empathy that starts building. You start correlating to that person that you were helping. You start feeling and you start relating it to yourself to see that, okay, you know what? I think this can be me as well. You start getting into that site that for everyone you start looking at equality, right? That is the main change that Seva starts bringing in. Seva will, it's very difficult otherwise, that you can only go ahead and outsource that Seva, do that charity and not feel about it. Then your Seva is not complete till you have completely empathized yourself. And that empathy will come in as you start doing more and more of Seva. Right? And that's what divinity is, right? Seeing myself in you is what divinity is. Coming to the next one, which is Mantra Vidya. I think here I would want to claw back to that Chitta Vritti Nirodh, right? What is Mantra Vidya? I mean, it gives us a state where through our Mantra Vidya, there are two things which are happening. We are increasing our capacity to focus, right? It's not only that we may end up saying that, yes, we are increasing our aura and stuff. That is very true. But that Mantra Vidya is actually increasing our focus to start looking within and making sure that that connection within is also staying strong, right? And that is what Mantra Vidya actually makes it. That vrittis become still, you start seeing through, your ability to focus through becomes improved. And then the last one, which is self-worship, right? Now, why does self-worship actually change anything when we come to reality? The biggest factor that today we are not able to do self-worship for ourselves could be that we are not able to see that divinity. We are seeing both the things are different. But the moment I start psyching myself and starting doing that self-worship, the first barrier is gone. And then post that first barrier is gone, your ego starts delivering, because you realize that you are the same person that is in front of you as well. You are into that cockroach as well. You are into that stone as well. Everything is you, right? And that self-worship actually starts coming till a ultimate point that you really become that Aham Brahmasmi. Did I get that thought process to you? Maybe you can help me just it out.
Yes, how I see it is following the, if I may call, the SMS formula, since we're talking a lot about science today, is that when you follow the SMS formula with perseverance, with self-discipline, with introspection and acceptance. Here, acceptance takes on a different meaning through the context of Ishwar Prani Dhan. See, it is, which means surrender to the will of God, or if I may change it, to the will of your Siddha Guru. So the moment you practice this thing, there is one major thing that happens is your ego starts to peel up layer by layer and peel or dissolve, or however you'd like to visualize it. And that is when the realization happens that you believe the mind alone to be the root cause of experiencing the world as if it were real. But actually, that cannot be truly considered, because it was not the real. I mean, you could not consider it to be a cause, since actually there is no mind. There is no mind.
Very good.
So in the deeper sense, when you start to go within and layer by layer or step by step, when you start to transcend, where either through your Kundalini, there are many parts to look at it, or meditation, right? So as you keep going it, and you keep realizing that you keep growing in terms of inclusivity or including, and you start losing the minute or the micro fibers or nucleus of what is made up of the mind, and go into a more macro picture.
Right. See, I think that atom is a really beautiful explanation from that perspective, right? Your goal should be not only that atom and to say that, okay, I'm iron atom, because at the core, it's only electrons and protons, or protons, right? It's only energy, nothing else.
Right. So right? That's what it is. So then that means that you cannot truly consider the mind to be the cause, because if there is no mind, that means there is only pure consciousness. But at the end of it, does that even exist? And if it is realized that the perceiving mind itself is unreal, then it is quite clear that the perceived world is unreal too.
Exactly. And actually, scientifically, it has been started to be agreed by many of the community that, everything is kind of waveform. The matter also doesn't exist, is also being talked about. So then, as the science evolves, we will also realize that, everything is only unreal, if I would say. I mean, the science is getting closer to that, if at all. It may take a while, because we are still brainwashed with our own current material physics, if I would say.
Right. So, if I may ask you, Gajendra, if we were to work towards the transcending of the mind, and of course you've told us the formula to do it. what would the first step be?
I think the detachment is the first step, right? And why the detachment is, everywhere our actions are being driven just because of our various reasons of being attached with something or other. And that's where this topic is very important. It's not about, thinking about mind as a mirror, but it's about understanding both,
The
right? What is
mirror.
mind, what is a mirror, and then the mirror, the basic property of a mirror that it is completely unattached, right? It doesn't care. Its valuation is nothing. It only knows that it wants to reflect, right? And that is what I would call, it should be the first step. Now, again, the question will be, how do I detach? I may only end up saying that, and this is my take on, because detachment is something which comes with a negative connotation, and people have problem with the thought process that how can I detach? If you cannot detach, get attached to so many things that you will realize that your realm is increasing to a level that you would never be attached to anything single, right? It's everybody becomes so close to you that you are almost divine, right? You never had divinity where the divinity is from one person to other only. It is divine and it is equal to everybody. Maybe that is the way. If you are having a scare, yeah, go ahead.
Inclusivity is what you're saying.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
If
Right.
detachment is something which scares you, then go ahead and broaden your horizon with inclusion.
Right. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, that's true. And with this, if I may just look at a few questions. Yes, we have a question from Pooja asking, is Drishta, Drishti and Drishya, Drishtikon the same as knower, known and knowable?
I would say yes, right? Because who's the knower, right? Known and knowable. All are the same elements with a different state for a moment. But the ultimate wheel over all of them is reality.
So like you say, H2O, the form, whether it's water, whether it's
It's
ice.
funny that you said that. Yes, people get scared when you tell. The moment we say H2O, the people in engineering domain think that it is a chemical. But the moment you say water, it's a life-saving thing. It's only that the drishtikon is changing.
Right. Right. And with that, dear audience, if there are any more questions, Gajendra would be happy to answer. Yeah.
I think I saw something on YouTube where the question was, what is, again, probably I'll just repeat what was the 3 Ds, because that was the question I think which Jay Malhotra asked probably.
Okay.
So the drishta is the seer, right? Where you're looking at something, right? Who's the observer, if I was to say. That is what the drishta is. Drishti is what is being seen, right? Now, this scene is different than what is perceived. This is only the projection, right? And the drishtikon is the sense that we make out of that drishti, right? And the classical thing is, drishti will never change. The drishtikon will change depending on what is the emotional baggage or what is the preconditioning that the drishta has, because that picture may depict a different story for each of the different drishtas. Yeah, I hope that answers what Jay Malhotra was trying to ask.
Sure. There's a question from Mr. Rajesh Sharma saying, if the senses reside in the mind, where does the mind reside?
in the biryani. Right? No, but
Yeah.
I think that's a potent one, right? I mean, for me to go ahead and say where does the mind reside, I think the mind has to go furthermore inwards, because what we are talking about, the biryani state was a more grosser form of mind, right? But to see the reality, we will have to transcend that grosser form furthermore inwards and peel off that into more subtler and subtler to be able to reach to that divinity state, right? Where the real mind will lie, is the way I will put it.
So you look at it as we've got a physical mind which is attached to a isthul sharir, or the physical body, and then we have the another mind which is this attached to the spirit body. Yeah.
Right.
And
So we,
so where does it sort of not exist? The Paramatma state?
yeah, because that's the all knower, right? So we went from the physical form to a all aware form, which is the Paramatma, is the way, but that is the ultimate one, is the way I'll put it.
Right. So the mind is actually is a manifestation of our thought, right? If we look at it from in its physical form, but the mind of the spirit is where we would we say where the samskars and the karmashya exist. Would that be right to say that?
Sorry. Tell me once again.
The mind, our physical mind, is where the senses,
Right. That's the material form.
Yeah, in the thing where we have, then we have the next, where you can say are attributes, where the tamas, the tamasic or the ratsic qualities, and the samskars, those that have been formed because of the emotions that we attach to a particular act, and into a karmashya, which goes with us with the spirit body, right? Which travels up with us. So that mind, that also has a mind of its own, because it has an attached identity or an ego still there. The ego as in an identity. The physical mind has an ego as in an ahankar, of being separate, or having an identity. But the samskars also, the spirit body also has a mind, which is still in a separate form. Okay? So what about it when it comes to the Atma? So at that point of time, what happens? Is there still a mind, or does it dissolve? Or to what layers would it go on? Till what layers would it continue for it to dissolve?
See, I think you're very right, right? The goal is to dissolve it. And if you go with that same thought which I gave you from the start, right? The first one where we started was when I was talking about the adulterations or the preconditionings. Okay, the senses are the preconditioning of this life, right? I can touch something, I can feel it is hot, cold, and that is where the first mind stays in. Then the second one is the samskaras as we go ahead and bring it, right? But at a certain stage where it comes, there is absolute calmness. It doesn't matter what it is,
Right.
and that is where it's completely detached. It when we talk about divinity, that state where nothing, it's the Brahman itself, right? And that is where the ultimate mind will reside.
Right. Till the Brahman is a Brahman, as we believe, it has a mind which then creates. And beyond that, what you're saying is when it reaches to the nothingness,
right?
What
that's
mind are we
sukshma,
talking
right?
about?
Exactly. That's Sukshma.
Got it. Got it. That's the Shukshma Sharir. Yeah. So here's another question by Geeta saying that, so where does intuition fit into this?
I think that's where, again, if you take intuition and if you go with the experiment that we talked about, was that intuition or that was a real state of mind where the observer was able to go ahead and see what was happening, right? So many a times, and the ability, when you're connected with everything, you are also able to communicate with everything. So I don't think so that then that pure intuition is really that I'm thinking about something, but you're communicating and then you are giving the outcome of that communication.
Yeah. So
Right?
the intuition, what you're saying is when is a step deeper into from your physical mind, when where logic or where judgment, when they are sort of calmed out or sort of cleaned out, the cobwebs of judgment and logic and emotions are sort of, the cobwebs are removed. You would sort of connect to your inner sense, where it sort of gives you that jhalak, as I would say, a jhalak into what is.
Right. See, the classical thing is we all have that ability. It's only our logic which prevents us from doing that.
So that is where your Chittavritri Nirodha comes into play.
Right, right.
To heighten that intuition, you need to be calmer. You need to calm the mind to be able to hear the intuition.
Exactly. And that SMS comes from that same thing, right?
And the SMS is the other tools. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Great. Yeah. With this, I think we've there are no more questions here, and I would like to thank you, Gajendra, for a very intense and interesting session. Understanding the mind, of course, there's a lot more we need to understand about it, and a lot of depth. But yes, this is the first step towards working towards what would I say? Not understanding the mind, but we need to now experience the various levels of mind or the various different kinds of mind that we have to really understand it. Is from
Right.
what I get from this whole point. Yeah.
True. And I think the journey is all inwards to that ultimate, right? I like that non-duality ultimate thought that I am one. Right?
Yeah.
Don't question yourself, but believe that you are that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this, dear audience, thank you very much for being with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Gajendra. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Sayonara. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.